What's going on? This is TJ Murphy, and welcome to another episode of Adventurous Entrepreneurs. My guest today is Bianca Sprague. Bianca is the founder of Bebo Mia, a dedicated educator, author, activist, and doula since 2007. Passionate about accessible pre- and postnatal care for marginalized communities, she advocates for mental wellness in families, drawing from her struggle with postpartum depression and family experiences. Bianca champions reproductive health and justice, focusing on breaking down barriers for female and queer entrepreneurs and restoring joy, equity, and safety in family care through her expertise and innovative approaches. Just a few of the golden takeaways Bianca shares in this episode are the importance of solving problems as the foundation of your entrepreneurial journey and getting clear on your message, how grassroots promotion can effectively connect you with your target market, even in a changing social media landscape, the value of building a loyal community of customers by focusing on meaningful engagement rather than chasing viral numbers, practical tips for identifying and nurturing business partnerships that align with your values and support mutual growth, and the significance of actively participating in local communities and events to build a strong network and establish yourself as a trusted resource. So, without further ado, this is me and Bianca Sprague. Welcome to the Adventurous Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, TJ Murphy. Since quitting my corporate 9-to-5 and starting a business while backpacking through Asia back in early 2017, I've had the privilege of learning from some incredibly adventurous entrepreneurs. Through these conversations and my own journey, I've learned that much like in life, entrepreneurship is an adventure. On this podcast, I explore the journeys of top-performing leaders in their fields. These wide-ranging conversations include tactical business advice, how I built this insights, lessons in leadership, life hacks, travel stories, favorite hobbies, and insights into living a purposeful and joy-filled life. Adventures await us, so let's dive in. Hey Bianca, welcome to Adventurous Entrepreneurs.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, really excited for the conversation. I can tell just from our intro, pre-recording conversation, this will be a fun one. So I'd love to start with just a bit of background on your journey. Life, business, what got you here today? Tell us a story.
My entrepreneurial journey would make such a good book series. It's been a wild ride. I actually started my business from a deep necessity of making money, what I perceived as fast, because I didn't know about the entrepreneurial speed. But I had just had a baby and I was in an unsafe living situation. This was almost 20 years ago. And I racked my brain. Like, I knew there was no job out of the house I could have found at entry level at 26 as a med school dropout. I was like, I got myself in a pickle here. And I remember pacing with my newborn, just being like, what am I going to do? Like, just bouncing, thinking like, okay, running down the list, like, what skills do you have? What, all of these things. And I realized I had a lot of rage from my birth. And so I wanted to make sure that people felt more protected than I did in the hospital. And so I was like, how am I going to do that? And I actually found doula work. And at first, because I also had really big, lofty ideas, like I found my goal book from 1998, and I, by that time, expected to have a yacht and a mansion. So I was well off. I was well off in my crappy little rental with a crappy spouse, and $0, and so I was like, ooh, how am I going to make these two things connect? Being a doula and, how am I going to make my life take shape? And I realized it was actually quite both profitable financially and then really fulfilling to just be problem solving. So I started just identifying problems around me and solving them. And rather than doing what most entrepreneurs do, which is come up with an idea and then jam it and try to find the hole for it to fit in, and people are like, no, I don't want that. And so I started just, serving families, and then I needed more people to help because my client load got very big very quickly because I did grassroots promotion and I, networked like, oh my goodness. But like really strategic networking, because that's something that women and queer folks are actually very good at, is creating alternative networks and whisper networks and barter networks. And so I like really utilize this skill. And then I found that people were coming in with not enough training. And so I started building my own training, and it was just supposed to be for my staff. And then that grew and people wanted it. And in 2013, I moved exclusively online, which was bonkers. It was like Kajabi was new. Like it were still like clunking along. There was no Teachable or like fill in the blanks with all of these really great platforms we have now. So I had to build this really ugly WordPress plugin so I could teach live in a digital space. And so not only was I like trying to figure out what a digital business was, there was no software support. And my industry was like, you cannot teach about breastfeeding online. You cannot teach about reproductive health online. Like, how are you going to teach about anatomy? How are you going to teach about massage techniques? And so I had to get creative and be like, how is it going to feel the same as if you were in my Toronto clinic, but in a digital space? How are people going to feel touch, moved, and inspired? Like, how are people going to come up to school over and over again? And like, how are you going to convince people to sit in front of their computer, because this was 11 years ago and a lot has changed.
Not the norm yet.
Not the norm. And so it was that in and of itself had so much fun, had so many wins, had so many losses, had so much money lost, had a lot of heartbreak where people were like, they're along for a part of it. And then when they fall off, I hadn't gotten used to that feeling of like the loss of relationships. Like it's really, plus the whole time being an entrepreneur is really brave and vulnerable. Like anybody, all of us doing it, I'm like, you guys, this is so brave and vulnerable, because it's scary. Your business is like an extension of you, and people like talk about it as if it's like the Gap or something, or I don't know, thinking of a global brand. But you're like, those are the greeting cards I made, or like that's the coaching package I created. That is me. And so it's scary. And it's been a lot of really beautiful gifts and a lot of deep, deep heartache. Plus the whole time I was like single parenting and the losses, like, my dad died in that time. Things happen. It's a lot, but I stand back and I look at, that moment of pacing, of being a 26-year-old about to be single parent, pacing a kitchen with $0 in their bank account, and to now look that I have a 7-figure business in 49 countries. That's like every step of my business changes the world, from whoever I employ to our scholarship program to like literally the work that my students go out and do is saving life and protecting parents. It's like I just can't fathom it. I still don't have a yacht. I'm
sitting here. Yeah, no yacht yet, but coming soon. Well, I'm just sitting here with like literal chills, just based on the inspiration of that story and like how much passion you've clearly poured into building this thing. I mean, out of necessity, but going about it strategically. I love how you say you started by looking at problems that you could solve, not just coming up with ideas. And I feel that is where so many people run into early major failures, is they think they have this brilliant idea, but they haven't actually gone out and figured out what's the problem that this thing is going to solve. Am I actually going to help people? Do people even need this? So that number one could be a rabbit hole. It is. It's a trap. It's a trap. Absolutely. At the end of the day, if you're solving big enough problems, you're going to find success as long as you stick with it. Yeah. But I'm curious about this grassroots promotion rabbit hole that we can go down, because I think that for any business that's starting out, or maybe you've been in business but you're hitting that point where you're kind of stuck, it's time to think outside of the box and get creative. What worked well for you early on to get so much success in building up that community?
So I early on, I told everybody about my business. And I also want to I don't know why it feels important to share this on your podcast, but it does. I was really struggling with the paradigm shift of the business that I chose to do, because my plan was to be to go and be a surgeon. And so the idea that I was doing something that nobody knew about, that was considered like really hippie and fluffy, that doctors really discredit, doctors make fun of doulas, like we're kind of a punchline. And I didn't know how I was going to get the wealth that I always imagined for myself. I've shifted a lot and now in my 40s, but in my 20s that I was like, how is this going to give me the life that I always imagined? Because I grew up very resourced with wealthy parents. They made a very weird parenting choice and kicked me out of the nest. I don't know what happened there, but they did. And so I had no safety net and no familial support, and I'm not in contact with my family. And so I knew like I had a life that I was accustomed to. And I was like, how is this all going to happen? So I actually felt really ashamed talking about my business. And I wanted to share that because I know a lot of other people do too, especially if you've left something else or you plan to leave something else to follow a passion. When you're like, oh, I'm leaving my lawyer job to like go be a yoga teacher. Sometimes you can have some embarrassment around that. So my initial was like way clunkier of how I talk about it because I was simultaneously embarrassed. So I wanted to like talk about it in a bigged up way, but I was losing the clear message of what I did. And it wasn't until I got like really clear, as a lesbian, I serve predominantly queer families now in my private practice. And so once I got really clear to be like, I keep queer people safe in the hospitals, people remembered that and they talked about it. But when I was like starting out, I would try to make doula care sound like as close to doctor care as possible because I was embarrassed, but it made my grassroots really hard unless I was talking within the wellness community. But I know that when you're starting, a lot of people don't share widely about their business because...
Oh, it's scary, right? Especially if you're leaving something that traditionally people consider success. You know, you're an attorney, you're getting your doctorate, whatever the case may be, you've invested all this time and effort into doing it, and people see you taking this leap, and you know, whether it's out of fear for you or, you know, some jealousy of what you're going after, it's hard to share. People won't always be rooting you on until you hit the pinnacle of success.
I know.
So.
And then they miss all the middle parts. Now people are like, love to brag about what I do. I was like, where were you when I was scrambling for my first $300?
When I was grinding,
grinding. So, but you just have to start telling people and getting really clear what you're telling them about. So a lot of times people have like a really long message, but get like really, really clear. So if you do want to quit law school or your legal practice and be a yoga teacher, that you're the yoga teacher that celebrates fat bodies and makes them feel great in movement. And so that people know exactly. So they're like, oh, my sister's fat and she wanted to do that. And if your community doesn't use the word fat, use plus size, use body positive, body celebration.
Speak their language.
Speak their language and just go start talking about people or talking to people. Now, the problem is I had this really strong chunk of time pre-social media where I was doing true grassroots. And then social media stepped in. And for a lot of people, especially women and queer folks, we have this like superpower of networking and like creating these alternative communication systems. But we've had a lot of that atrophy with... Everybody's had this atrophy though, with social media, because we have this kind of like false empty promise that like there's always virality around the corner. Like at any time you're going to take off and the whole world will know who you are. As well as that we think like if you just put up a post, that's going to be enough and people are going to come. And so this is this trap, which we're constantly seeking it. So we're losing so much of our time because, face it, entrepreneurs aren't always known to have super great boundaries around like their time and project durations and like all of these things. And so I found personally, I had this experience of grassroots, true grassroots, like where you like literally send a letter, go talk to people. And then I had this thing where Meta was new, Meta being the body that manages Facebook and Instagram, to name a few. And the algorithms, I figured out how to make it work. And so Facebook ads for me were my number one. Like I could make 6 figures by putting in like pennies because I had mastered
the glory days of Facebook ads.
The glory days. So it like extra atrophied for me because I was like, oh, all we have to do is throw up our ads. I did really great webinars. We did really high touch care, but like my funnel was like a faucet, like a fire hose spraying into my mailing list. And then So I had this happen, and then in the pandemic, so I broke my 7-figure goal in the pandemic. That was like really exciting. And then literally, not only did the world change, the economy changed, but the algorithm, it like went out the window. And so I was so confused because I had this like lull into false sense of security. And now I was like, I could put 10,000 into ads and maybe make $500. Like, so I was losing. Like my ads are just like, they still are a hole in the bottom of my bucket. And I still keep playing with them a little bit because I just keep thinking I can trick it. But they're so not profitable for most small businesses because of what you need to put in. The numbers that we're talking about is like, yeah, if you put 60,000 in, you're going to hit those things. But like most small businesses don't have that to put up front.
No.
Now, some do, and some products are great and some low ticket items. But for anybody that's doing service work or like higher ticket items, it's a really hard sell and you have to have a really strong funnel. So I got complacent, and I found that that first bit after 2021-ish, where like this wave had run out, and I wasn't doing my grassroots movement of marketing, my revenue dropped 40% in 8 months and was so hard to climb out of this hole. I'm still kind of climbing out of it. But what I did is it gave me a chance to step back, be like, okay, I got to pivot, like super pivot here. The world is completely different. I was really tired, so it was hard. And I put together a framework that's using the best of both worlds of how we can use social media in our favor. But really, people are screen fatigued. People are like, what used to be whatever it was, a 3-second attention span is now like less than half a second. Like, like
you've got a moment in time.
A moment in time. So like we have to do things that are way more creative and way more interesting and way more connective for people to remember you and to have your business actually have social media work for you. And what I say, so I'm going to walk you through the framework, but I find it interesting. I still seek virality and it drives me nuts, and I can sometimes waste way too much of my day. But like recently I had a post hit 300,000 views, a reel, which I was like, oh, that's cool. That's probably one of my top ones. From it came nothing besides 300,000 views of it. I didn't notice a big jump in my followers.
Some vanity feels.
Some vanity. It made me feel good to be like, oh, cool. There's 3 digits in front of that K. And then I put up a post, I don't know, like 48 hours later that had, I think, 24 likes, but it got 35 people on my mailing list. I made $187 right off the jump. Like they literally like pressed it and bought the thing, which is like, it's cool. Like compared to the 300,000 one that did nothing. And then of those 35 people, we probably sold another $700. So that post made me $1,000. Which, depending on the size of your business, that might be nothing, but that might be wildly exciting.
But those are also people that will buy from you later, right? They're in your list now. Funnel. They're in your funnel.
But it only had 20 something likes. And so if you looked at that, you'd be like, oh, but this one looks so much sexier. Of course it looks sexier on your page to have 300,000 likes or 300,000 views. But this one, the 300,000 views did nothing for me. The other one did a lot for me. And now I have more people in my community. To get 35 people on your mailing list from one post, like leads on Meta are between $2 and $4 a lead. So you do the math on that. That was about $100 of savings for me, knowing the cost of my cost per clicks for me. So
let's pause there just real quick, because I think that is something that so many people just lose sight of. Is like, it doesn't really necessarily matter if you're getting these huge viral numbers. It's about speaking into your right audience, your 100, your 1,000 true fans, the people that are going to buy from you and then become those brand advocates that love everything that you do and continue to buy time and time again. If you have a post that reaches just 24 of them and they love it and they come and they join your mailing list and they buy from you, boom, that's so much more impactful than having that viral post. So you said that beautifully, and it's so important.
Totally. And I want you guys to start seeing your social media as a revenue generator and seeking fame. It's not, I would guess that most of you are service-based businesses just because the overhead is much lower to start a service-based business. But this will also be applicable with product-based things. But with the service-based, like, you are your business, and people, you need to have these like right connections, and you don't need the whole world to know about you. You need your target market. Like, there's people whose businesses are getting 300,000 would be like an embarrassing day on their post because they're making memes, or they're making like generic content that's like their channel is their business, is sponsorship. They get paid to have these things. Your business is connecting with people and having people fall in love with you and your brand and your products. So how do we do that? I'll tell you.
Tell us, please.
Okay. So I'm going to break this up because I know my entrepreneurial fellow brothers and sisters, and we struggle sometimes without very clear boundaries and takeaways. So I've broken this up into 15-minute tasks. Please set a timer. I have something that I really love. I don't want to turn it on. Oh, you guys can't see me, but there's these time cubes, and you can like literally flip it and it will just like automatically set the common times, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. So use your time cubes or your phone timer. Yeah, it's awesome. And it like lights up and it's not too jarring for me, and it like works out real well.
Cool.
And so I set a 15-minute timer. You go on social media. This is okay. So I have two fields here. One of you might be selling your services locally. So like for me, I mean, Bebo Mia is my big global movement, but I also have a private practice, which is wherever I am serving clients. So I now live in rural Nova Scotia, and my town is like my area, Pictou County, is where I serve. And so I need to have Pictou County know who I am. I don't need my channel to be hitting the world. I don't actually, like, they'll kind of bog my channel down. I don't care if there's only 100 followers because I want Pictou County to know who I am. So if you have a local business, you want your neighborhood, your area, the city, your county, your region, your town. That's really like shift your brain from global and put it into, this is a hub that's going to be for your geographic area. Now, if you have an online business, you have to pick some kind of metric. So you have to either pick a geographic area that you're going to focus in on, a demographic, a psychographic, you have to pick something, and so that you have some sort of focus. So for example, with Bebo Mia, one of the really nice intersections for me that I was like, oh, this is a community I could explore, is military spouses. So I had to like a really hyper focus of connecting because their spouses are deployed. I think it's really important to have a doula on every base. It's like a really sweet spot for them, and they don't have a lot of support, and then my job doesn't require childcare. So I was like, oh, this kills a whole bunch of birds with one stone. And so that was the grid that I set up. So you can pick whatever you want, but so you can apply anything that I'm talking about local to a globally based business, but you have to find some kind of grid map for yourself. Okay, so Your first task is in your local area, you want to find 10 to 15 channels. So it's no more than 15 minutes. Of where your target market would go. So like, who would you share clients with? And really think about this. So when I started thinking about this in my early days, because I was like literally doing it without the benefit of social media, I knew when people had babies, they also bought houses because they needed more space. And so I got to know like the real swanky real estate agencies around me, the firms, and I put together really fun packages that they could leave on the counter to let people know about my services when they had clients who were pregnant. And so that it was like products and a coupon. And then I started thinking about life insurance. People usually get more life insurance or get their first policy once they have kids. So I got to know them. Like, really think about all the adjacent services that your clients have. So maybe you do coaching and you have some element of wellness and the eco entrepreneur. Then you're for sure going to want to know the body practitioners, like the chiro, osteo, physio in your town. You're going to want to know where people go for like juice cleanse information, really think about all the other things. And you also want to scan if they're aligned with you. So like if they're putting up something that you're not politically aligned with or environmentally in line with, like whatever it is, they don't have, for me, I'm like really big into unpacking anti-fat bias. So if they don't have a channel that shows and celebrates all bodies, like I don't typically reach out to them because I was like, you're not going to follow the values. And there's for point 4, this is very, very important. Yeah, you got to have alignment and like really great alignment because I'm going to tell you why, because point four is my favorite. Okay, so now you've been doing this 15-minute tasks. You could do a few times in the week. Then your next chunk of 15-minute tasks is you're going to blow up their notifications. You follow these channels. You're going to like their stuff. You're going to share it. You're going to comment about it. You want them to be like, whoa, TJ Murphy is on us. I was supposed to say something about crude. my favorite expression. TJ
we can be crude here.
Us. It was like so not something I would normally say. So I was like, no, let's just keep with the fact you wouldn't say that, Bianca. Cool. So like that they want, because it's a great way to do the easy intro, right? And as entrepreneurs, we know when somebody's blown up our notifications. Like I get hundreds and hundreds of notifications in a day, and I still can recognize the same names that I was like, wow, every day this week you've shared my stories. I know who you are. I don't know them, but they stand out to me and I recognize their circle and their brand. So this is planting those seeds. Okay. So you can DM them to be like really great content. I love that you did like really blow up their notifications. So 15 minutes though. So do not let this run on and on. And I like tracking them in a spreadsheet. I find that helpful. Yep. But you can just you do whatever system you want. Okay. Now your next chunk of 15-minute tasks is to come up with collaboration ideas. And some of them might be like a blog swap. You could have a contest that you run together. You could have them on as an Instagram live. You could have an offer that you guys offer for your community. You could do a really low risk, low effort event, like keep it chill. You could do a talk at their location if they're brick and mortar. You could do also philanthropic ventures. So if you host like a diaper drive or a can drive, like something that it spans all people, and if you're the host of it and you get all the local businesses to put the box in their store and it's hosted by you, collaborated by, like, that's the best way to go out and meet 50 businesses, and then you've now stocked the food bank or the drive or whatever your community is really lacking in. But so really think of make a list of collaboration ideas. Those are 15-minute task. Your next one is to make templates. So that it kind of outlines your ideas, and you can tweak the intro and the outro of it, but you have the body of here's my idea, here's a blog swap, here's a link to my website. You don't need to retype that over and over again. I'm big on smoothing out your operations. So have those templates ready and so that they're good to go. Now you're going to ask people out. So you can send them the template. I always try to hit 2 places. So they have a contact form, which I find lots of stuff gets lost in contact forms. I will use the contact form to say, hey, I sent you a DM. If I always find email to be the best of the best. So, but if I sent them an email, their email address is on their website, then I also in their DMs say, hey, I sent you an email. So I try to always make sure I've hit 2 of those spots, and let them know, I love your channel. They know who you are now because they've seen you.
You've been blowing them up.
Yeah, you've been blowing them up. And you say I'd love to chat about some really fun ideas, and I had some questions about you. And this part is key because a lot of times when you're a smaller business and you're going to a bigger fish, you go in with this apologetic energy. And you go in thinking you're asking please, can you refer me? Please, can you give me this? Can you think you're kind of latching on, and here's how I want you to swap it. Now, some men, you find this, you don't even know what I'm talking about because you exist as men on the planet. So this is for people who might feel like that, or folks that are shy or very introverted. Here's your toolkit to survive those moments. So you don't go in thinking you're asking for help. Instead, what you're doing is you're going in representing all, standing in front of all the clients you're ever going to have. Imagine they're all behind you, your lifetime of clients. And you're going in to vet on those clients' behalf so that they have a great continuity of care, so that their values, their political beliefs, their bodies, their families, their race, their, you know, gender expression is all going to be safe and protected. So I have a list of questions that I ask brands, and I say it like, so I just really want to make sure my clients are safe if I refer you. And then I have these questions like, what commitment have you had to anti-racist, anti-oppressive work within your business? And then I let them, you know, tell me how you celebrate queer families. And then I let them tell me. And if they don't have answers that feel great, then I just like let it fizzle out and I move on. Yeah. But I want to know that when I send my clients to them, that they're going to feel safe, they're going to feel taken care of, that it's going to have the appropriate services. And so it completely changes the energy of feeling like you are going in and asking something of them. It's like one of my favorite pro tips. One of my favorites.
Yeah. You're pitching value, but you're also vetting them out and making sure that there is that alignment that we talked about in the beginning. You know, maybe what they're putting out there into the world once you've done your due diligence isn't actually what is hiding under the surface. And that's super important, especially in a line of work where there's a lot of sensitivity or, you know, a longer term partnership where you have to absolutely feel good to be able to send referrals their way.
Yeah. For sure. And if we use the example back at the, you know, the fat celebrating yoga teacher, if you're sending somebody in and they're not size inclusive, they treat them poorly, they roll their eyes, they have the, like, you know, they uphold fat phobia and fat bias, your client is going to come back being like, you know, you're trying to build up my body, make me feel really proud of it. We're trying to unlearn how hated I am by society, yet you sent me into a shop or to a practitioner or to the health food store, and they treated me like I was all the things that I'm trying to like not accept about myself. And so you can take it like really seriously, you know, or if you're doing, you know, money work or like accounting or unlearning money stories, and you send in your single parent client because you're like, oh, this bank is really great, and they treat them like they do to single parents, you know, and discredit or don't support them in the same way, or don't think they have enough money to even have these conversations, that person's going to leave feeling really defeated and discouraged and ashamed. And so you have to vet your black book, and it's not enough just to be like, oh, I met TJ. Like, TJ's great. We just met today though. And if I wanted to refer TJ to somebody, I'd have to have a follow-up conversation to be like, so I really enjoyed you, but I need to know, like, how are you working with other dykes? Like, you know, and just find out so that I could then refer TJ and put him in my black book. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then you have to see how these conversations go. But all of your collaborations are really, they're low risk. And they are planting those seeds so that your Instagram channel or your TikTok or your Facebook page or whatever channel you're using is like this really tight, interconnected local web. Even if you want to start a podcast, make it the best local podcast, because like, go to your local events, find out what's happening in your neighborhood, interview local entrepreneurs. And that spans no matter what you're doing. And you've become the Brooklyn podcast, or I don't know, I'm trying to think, the like
Bend, Oregon
Washington podcast.
Yeah.
You know, like that's you've become the host, and everybody's like, oh, that's in Olympia. You know, if you wanted to find out what's happening in Olympia, what's happening with entrepreneurs, with cool events, music, like whatever the scene is, and this will span like whatever type of business you have. And so the idea of kind of having, rather than you going on Instagram and trying to get 200 people to like your post, which is really hard, you guys, it's very hard to get 200 sweet spot potential clients to like your stuff. But if you have 50 businesses in your community talking about you, you reign in clients. Like, I couldn't believe my roster was full in my second month, and I came out super hot, and I found out what the highest priced doula was, and I priced myself $100 more. And so like I came in as the highest priced doula in Toronto, with brand new to the city, and I swam in clients, and I asked for like, I was, again, because I was seeking my yacht, I was going for like the super upper echelon. I was like, what NBA players are having babies, what actors who live here are like, going to like, you know, the uber rich, and just like moving through those spaces. But I just like went to like, where would they go, who would they know, and talked about my care. And then once you get in, then you got your word of mouth that keeps you going. But one of the pro tips I have here is you have to keep replenishing. So I would say if you have time, you could do this monthly, like if you need to, but I would recommend at least quarterly. You go through this process so that because your black book will get stale. People stop doing the care. You guys just kind of like fizzle out. Their business closes. They don't like you. You don't like them. Something happened. Like, you know, there's lots of reasons. Their care slips. They stop carrying a product that is the thing that you recommend. Like, there's lots and lots of ways. So you have to keep having this kind of like replenish cycle, so that you have, and there's going to be new businesses coming in. So you know, snap them up and get to know them, and create really cool partnerships and collaborations. And my final pro tip is get out and volunteer at local events. If you live in a bigger area that has trade shows, like, get out to them. And the idea is not to talk about yourself. Your idea is to go find out from other people, because especially if you volunteer, it's usually not really cool to go and promote your own business.
Pitch yourself.
So like other people are spending $30,000 on their booth and you cruise in. But talk to everybody and get to know them. You can have something branded on if that's not part of the volunteer contract. But like, go and talk. Like, whenever there was the baby shows, I would go and I would volunteer, and then I'd spend the whole time, only because I tried having a booth and it was like such a waste of $30,000 and it didn't work out for me. But I did find if I went around and talked to everybody, being like, show me how to use the strollers, how does your insurance policy different than somebody else, what's the hottest bottle, like all these things. And I showed interest and I talked to them and I got their cards, and then I followed up after, and I would have notes and notes. So go out and volunteer. If you don't live in a big city, or you should just at these other smaller events anyway, go find out who has like open houses, like go on Evite, those kind of, not Evite, eBrite.
eBrite, yeah.
Or you can send eBites out to people for your own, but go on to something like eBrite or like, you know, Facebook events, those kinds of things, and see what's happening. And if somebody's having a yoga in the park, go and ask if you can help, you know, take down, set up, give name tags, if, you know, they need any support in running that event. And that's what I did with the local midwives when I moved here, because I didn't know anybody. I moved 2,000 miles from Toronto. That I found out what events were happening, and I went to all of them. And I was like, hey, I'd love to help, you know, set up, take down, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I got to just chat with them while I was helping them. And of course people are going to say yes. If anybody was like, can I help you clean up your event? I'd be like, 100%.
Like, who are you? Yes, please. Yeah. Let's be friends.
Yes, please. Anytime people do things for, like, when you're coming to introduce yourself and you come with value, like being like, here's a really free e-course, a great free e-course that your clients might like, or I'd love to help you volunteer, or I was thinking, like, you know, you haven't really hit these communities, I'd love to go introduce you to this pocket, like whatever it is. When you come with an act of service, it makes it appealing to follow up with you. As somebody who has a pretty large business, I get probably about 50 emails a week of people being like, oh, hey, so I started this course, can you promote it for me? And I was like, this has cost me, you know, at least $2 million in marketing over this time. No, I'm not. But if they came being like, here's the thing, or I just sent you a book that I thought you'd really like based on this live I watched you do, it should be in the mail, look out for it, let me know what you think and we can have a chat. And they haven't asked for anything at this point, and I'd be like, wow, I love when people send me presents, like being like, thanks for this cool business book, I would happily have tea with you online and talk about why you liked this book, and then at the end of it they could promote whatever they wanted and I'm listening. And so, you know, when you think about like the effort that it's going to take for you to grow a channel that has the traffic and the effort, you know, to have the outcome, it's so much faster, it's way more fulfilling, and it's the heart-centered part of what makes businesses really great. And I think that, like, you just can't afford not to get off social media in the way we're doing it and really connect to people. Yeah, for sure. I can't say enough about
Absolutely.
it. Like, just
man,
like,
I mean,
get
like
off.
just
Yeah.
everybody listening, like take a moment, because this right here, what Bianca just broke down for us, is so valuable. We're using the local context, but obviously you can apply it and tweak it to a national scale. But let's recap, because if you do this, whether you're starting out or are already in business, but hitting that point where you're just not seeing the opportunities coming in, you're fizzling out, you're plateauing, doing that extra work and putting in the effort to first understand who your people are, what are the values, where are they hanging out, what are those complementary services that they're going to be seeking, so that you can jump into step one and find those potential partnerships, those 10 to 15 channels that are going to be your best bet to be able to create a great, prosperous win-win-win situation. Win for you, win for the other business, and win for your clientele that you share. Getting in there, blowing them up. Step two, putting some purposeful time on your calendar every day to go nurture that list. You're not pitching, you're not asking, you're just providing that value. You're leaning in, sharing their stuff, commenting on their stuff, hyping them up, saying, hey, I loved that post you made about X, Y, and Z. I took this away from it, actually shared it with my mom. She loved it too. Just give them tons of praise and value, so that when you do get to that point where you have an awesome idea for a collaboration, whether that's an event, you want to have them on your podcast, whatever the case may be, they're warmed up. They've seen you. They've probably started following your stuff and engaging with it. Yeah. So even if you haven't met in person, you've kind of built up this buddy relationship and some goodwill there, so that when you get to step 5 or 4, I'm losing track, but you're reaching out. You're not just going for the shortcut of asking for something right away. You're saying, hey, I have some ideas, but I have a couple questions I want to run by first, and just to get to know you better. Yeah, I just want to get to know you better. So now you're relationship building. You're taking it offline. You're building that true relationship where you can understand if you even like each other. Are you going to be able to do business together? And then, if and only then, it makes sense, you get in and you create that low risk opportunity to collaborate. And jumping into your pro tips as well, you got to keep replenishing, keep feeding the beast. Set aside 30 minutes, an hour a day or a week, whatever's going to be sustainable so you can be consistent with it, to actually go and do this work, and putting it on your calendar so that you can be top of mind and stick with it. This will get you business if you do the work.
I promise you it will. And I just want to set one expectation for you all, because we're already like so vulnerable doing our businesses, and some people take rejection better than others. I want you to remember that for every 10 people you reach out to, 1 or 2 will respond with something. And I want that to be your expectation. So, and if you have more than that, then like high five, send me a thumbs up emoji on Instagram. I'd love to know about it. But I want to say this so that you don't feel discouraged. So if you do write to 100 people, the goal would to be have 10 really strong referrals, so that you can just have that ratio, so that you don't think that you're about to have every one of them reach out and want to do collaborations, because that can feel really discouraging. It sucks when you're unread, or worse yet, they've seen it and they still didn't write you back. They ignored it. So just be prepared for that and be like, great, that's 1 out of the way to get to the for sure 1 in 10.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And just so that we have a little bit of protection, and do the outreach part when you're feeling really great. So if you wake up in the morning and you feel like headachy and crappy, or you're having that imposter syndrome, or you're like, why am I doing it? Or you've had a client send you a shitty email the day before, then like that morning is not the time to do your outreach. You really want your outreach to be when you like feel really pumped up, you've got awesome outreach energy about it. Then when you hit send, or you know, whatever it is on your DMs, that you feel like, yes, I can't wait to see how pumped they're going to be to know me.
Yeah, totally. I think that's so important, because it is easy to get discouraged, but just remember, you're already so brave and courageous for starting down this entrepreneurial journey, for doing the work and reaching out. And one no is just one no closer to the next yes. So it takes time to build up that armor, but keep at it, and you will get that strengthening toughness to just keep at it day in and day out.
And some days you won't. Yesterday,
maybe not. You're gonna be discouraged.
That it was so
and that's
hard.
Okay.
that I just found everything hit like so deep yesterday. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, my screen door fell out and it fell onto this pepper plant I've been growing since a seed.
No!
And it didn't just like crack it, like it exploded and it was like so close to being harvestable and it like obliterated. And I literally felt like somebody had come and said, your business is gone. Like, bye. Like, it hit so deep. And I knew yesterday was supposed to be a networking day that I was like, I cannot do this if I'm crying over this pepper plant that I was so excited that I grew because I'm not very good at those things. So you're going to go through these ebbs and flows, and it's the days where you're like, oh my God, I'm practically a god. I'm so good at business. Those are the days you want to do your networking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so much goodness in here, Bianca. As we wrap up, is there any like mantra or piece of advice, a quote, I don't know, anything at all that just has kind of guided you, been that compass for you throughout your entrepreneurial journey that you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think rather than a mantra, I mean, I have a few, but one of my favorite things to keep me in the now is I have remembered such a visceral memory of that feeling of pacing with my daughter Gray as a newborn, that like helplessness of like, what am I going to do? I'm like broke. I don't like, what am I going to do? And I was starting at negative ground zero. And I can remember that so deeply, so that when I stand and I look at my business now, I feel every bit of like the love notes that I get, or people that say I've changed their life, or people that have written to me and said they've made, $100,000 this year with their business and they've bought their first house or they got out of domestic violence or whatever it is. It like hits me so fully because I know all the steps that come in the middle. And when I'm feeling impatient, so I also get that feeling when I look at somebody who's like, I had a $3 million month. There's this girl who I can't stop following, and she posts her bank account, and it like is like a million cuts most times for me. And I have to just like stop and be like, okay, but back then I couldn't have fathomed having a 7-figure year. And so like, if I want it, it will come. I don't know if I want to make $3 million in a month because it just, my values are different than that now. But like, I make sure that I stay so present in what I'm doing, and I check in again to make sure that I still love what I do. And you have to actively build this in the same way you check your bank account and you update your values. Well, actually, most people don't do that, and you should. But like, check to see if you still like what you're doing. And if you don't love it, if it doesn't excite you, pivot. And it doesn't mean you have to close your business, just like pivot a little bit. I fell a little bit out of love with my business. And so I did a tiny pivot, and it was like really fun, and it breathed life back into it. And so I know it's not a mantra, but I do have a practice of closing my eyes and remembering that moment of like how unloved and unsafe and worthless I felt, but knowing I was really special. And I can connect to the pride every day, being like, oh my God, I can't believe I've built a global movement. What the heck? So those are my words of wisdom.
Yeah. Well, it's super powerful. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story with us, Bianca. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to want to connect with you through whatever the best means are. So what is the best way to support you, connect with you online, socials, website, things like that?
Yeah. So we made a page because I think that's one of the important parts when you've connected with somebody face to face, or like we did. For all of your listeners, we have a page on our website just for you. So it's bebomia.com. That's BEBOMIA.com/adventurous. And it's got a little bit about what we talked about, and then some free ways to hang out in my community. It also has our social channels on there, but if you want to follow us on social and skip the website part, you can head over. I love our Instagram the most. Our marketing team manages our Facebook, so I don't spend a lot of time on it. But I have my hands deep in Instagram. But all of our social channels, from LinkedIn to Twitter to Pinterest, are all at Bebo Mia Inc. And again, that's BEBOMIAINC. Bebo Mia Inc.
A little bit.
We'll
put the links to everything in the show notes to make it super easy. And I know I'll be jumping over there to check out what resources and awesome things are happening in the community now that I've learned more about it. So Bianca, thank you so much. We were talking about the creative energy that you were feeling coming into this, and I felt it. So thank you for pouring into this podcast and just sharing such value with us.
Thanks so much for having me. Oh, that's great. I loved everything about this. I love supporting entrepreneurs, and I have lots of ways that I do that. So come check us out.
To all of our Adventurous listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, download, and share this on social media or with someone you know will get some value from it. Leaving a review goes a long way in helping people find the show, and I personally appreciate reading them when they come in. So please go drop one if you have the time. We'll see you all next week, and remember, whether we're talking about business or the things that bring us joy outside of work, life is meant for exploring. So go out there and live it one adventure at a time.